Okay, so there is a lot to unpack in that one question. So I'm going to try and break this down. I've done all of the work ahead of time, and I know it looks very complicated. And so, in order to save time, though, I put it all out here so I could explain what I did. The first part is to write the Lewis structure of the phosphate ion right here. Now, when you draw Lewis structures like this, oxygen always has to fulfill its octet. Phosphorus, on the other hand, can have an expanded octet, which is why we see a progression here of more than 8 electrons on that phosphorus atom as we go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, until we have oxygen with double bonds showing its octet there. Also, oxygen can never have more than 2 bonds. So oxygen can have 1 bond, it can have 2 bonds. Phosphorus can have variety. So if we go through the options, we can see that formal charges have been assigned according to this method here. And that is that valence electrons is or you subtract from the valence electrons the number of unpaired electrons and the number of bonds. So for example, this oxygen right here has 6 valence electrons. It has 6 unpaired electrons, and it has 1 bond. And so that gets an overall formal charge of -1. Phosphorus right here starts off with 5 valence electrons, subtract 0 unpaired electrons plus 4 bonds. That gets us a +1. Now, formal charges are favorable when they are closer to 0, and when we have negatives, they go on the more electronegative element, and oxygen is the more electronegative element here. So I chose the second Lewis structure because it has formal charges of 0 in 2 different places, and it has the negative formal charges on the more electronegative atom. Now we can draw out the different resonance structures, and that involves moving this double bond from location to location. It's important to note that resonance structures are not individual different Lewis structures. It's just the best way that we can show the overall molecule and what it's doing. The overall then molecular shape here is going to be tetrahedral because we have a central atom with 4 things attached to it. So that's phosphorus. If we want to look at sulfur, it's very similar. We have oxygen fulfilling its octet, and sulfur being allowed to have that expanded octet. We choose the Lewis structure that has the formal charges that are closest to 0, and the negatives are on the more electronegative element, which is oxygen. And so this becomes our correct Lewis structure, and we have our individual resonance structures. And this is going to be trigonal pyramidal because of the 3 different sites attached to it, along with the lone pair. We'll see that in every single example.